from this to this. What's good, guys? So today the key word is intention. And when I say intention, I mean every decision we make when creating a sample should be thought out, and every sound should be there for a reason. We're gonna have a couple of main sounds, some supporting sounds, and then just some other percussions and textural stuff that is gonna add to the overall experience that the sample gives to the listener. So essentially, that sample was just 2 chords. We are doing like a 1-4 progression in D minor. However, I am adding in a 5-1, where I'm going from a 5 chord to a 1 chord, and I'm also doing a little diminished chord, which I'm using again as a party chord. If we take it right back to basics, we're in the key of D minor, and if you've seen any of my other videos, I normally work in C major or A minor, but it's good to vary up sometimes, has a slightly different sound, and it can maybe spark some different ideas with your creativity. So the first chord, being a minor 1 chord, is a D minor. We take the root note, which is a D, the minor third, which is an F, and the 5th, which is an A. We get this. Let's add another note to make it a D minor 7th chord, and then let's add one more note to make it a D minor 9 chord. So like normally if we're in A minor, this would be our 4 chord. Today this is our 1 chord. So our 4 chord in D minor is actually a G minor chord. We count up the minor scale, the 4th note in the scale is G, and therefore our 4th chord in the scale is going to be a G rooted minor chord. We start with this G here, pop in a minor third, which is an A sharp or B flat, and we pop in the 5th. Let's add another note in an F note and make it a G minor 7th chord, and let's add another note in to make it a G minor 9 chord. These 2 chords share quite a lot of similar notes. So can you see that even just adding these 2 notes, now if we play both chords one after the other, they're going to sound quite rich and full. But I think we can do better than that. So what if we actually take these 2 notes in the D minor chord and drop them down an octave? Oh, now we're getting into that sort of very lush R&B, neo-soul kind of territory with the chord voicings. We can go even further. We can take this note here, this G note, we can maybe lift that up an octave and we get something like this. What else can we add to make these more interesting? We can add some rhythm, how we play these chords in the passage of time with the click going or any kind of percussion track. So you see how just moving that immediately gives us a little bit of space here. That rhythm is just something that enhances the bounce. So guys, if you're enjoying today, go follow me on Instagram. My handle is right here. Hit me up. I'd love to hear from you. And go cop some of my free mini kits. You've got bass midis in there. You've got stems, all kinds of goodies. And the link is also in the description. Let's get back to it. I played a 3rd chord in this progression. All I did was I was thinking about doing a 5-1 progression, which is commonly used in R&B. That is just a way of getting back to our 1 chord here by using a chord that is a 5th away. You can use a major chord or a dominant chord, a 5th away. That will create tension that wants to pull back to this D chord. A 5th away from the D would be an A. So if we build an A major, simple A major chord, and an A major chord will be built with an A, a C sharp, and an E. If we take that A chord, that sounds really interesting now. There's one more chord we can do. We also know that we can approach any minor chord with a diminished chord, a semitone away. So what if we were to create a C sharp diminished, and we create diminished chords by just stacking minor thirds? That would be a C sharp diminished chord in its just normal root position. If we move this note down an octave, there's not so much of a jump between this chord and this chord. Beautiful. And that is the theory behind what we've done. Now let's get into all of the sound design and all the fun stuff. We're going to do this a little bit differently from usual. I'm going to focus more so on my mixing techniques here. And as you can see, this is the session and it's really simple. I've only got 2 lead sounds, a bass, a guitar, a couple of percussion and some textures. And the simpler and the more compact you keep your session, actually the bigger and more full it's going to sound. The first thing I want to highlight is my mastering chain. I've just saved the preset mastering chain, and to be honest, I slap this on almost everything I do. It just brings the volume up, takes a little bit of the harshness out with this soothe here, adds a little bit of tape saturation. I have a real tape machine, but honestly, don't plug it in very much. I know that sounds bad, but these emulations are just so good now. I put an L2 on just for a little bit of volume. I use my metric KB to just compare against other samples if I'm making samples and other beats if I'm making beats, just to make sure my levels are all correct. I don't start this on because this introduces latency. When I play my keyboard, I want to hear it instantly. So I usually just start with a blank slate here. In Logic, you have this low latency button as well, but it does disable certain plugins when you use it. I usually start with an idea, some chords. I like jamming out on the guitar. I'm more of a guitarist than a keyboard player. I listen to some other samples to get inspiration, and then I just come up with a simple chord progression. Actually use this sound that I made in one of my previous videos, like that glidey sine wave R&B synth. But I just added an LFO, which is a low frequency oscillator, to the volume, the master volume, and to the cutoff as well, to give you that kind of wobbly effect. Can it whoa, 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 whoa. How I like to see my samples is like a movie. I've got a lead actor, maybe 1 or 2 supporting actors, and the rest of the elements are just going to kind of add weight to the whole movie, just, you know, give it some direction. We're telling a story here and we want to immerse the listener or the producer in something incredible, drive them on and inspire them to create something great from an amazing starting point. I just EQ'd it. I like using EQ just to roll off the bottom of certain sounds to leave more space for the low end. And I boosted this a little bit in the mid-range because there's not much going on. With a sine wave, there's no real upper harmonics, so cut through a little bit on smaller speakers. I give it a little boost in the mid-range, although it's not just a simple sine wave. We've got this other thing here going on. Once I had that sound, I added in this choir. I used like the D minor chord, but I left out the D note. There's a little bit of interplay rhythmically between the 2 sounds, and there's also places where they lock up rhythmically. And that just gives like the ear something to catch on to that's not the same all the time. Little subtle variations like that keep things interesting. Again, it's not going to sound like a boring loop. Also, I leave the velocities all kind of random as I played them in. I avoid putting the velocities all at the same level because, again, I think that makes it sound a little bit too static. I just really EQ'd it out there, and I added a little bit of this chorus. And then I wanted to put bass in, and again, this is probably one of the most simple basses you're going to see in any of my tutorials. Root notes with 1 little passing note here, but my whole philosophy for this sample was just space. I love that where we're hitting that really low note there. It just has real impact when we go all the way down to the octave below. If you notice, with these 3 sounds, I'm taking up the low end here. I'm taking up, well, most of the mid-range with these 2 sounds, but they're playing off each other. There's not much high end, but again, it's quite a dark R&B sample, so didn't really need too many bright sounds going on here. And I knew that the percussion was going to add in a couple of little bright notes as well, some tappy sounds going on. I added a flute and a little piano sprinkle, but they're just to play accents really. Playing around with that kind of pentatonic sound there. Recorded my nylon string guitar and I was just noodling around in D minor on my phone. I sent it over to the computer and I reversed it. Interesting processing on it. I just put it really low in the mix. You can see it here, but it just adds a nice textural bed. EQ, phaser, shaper box, and vintage verb. Sounds beautiful. And I did the same with the vocal, where I just sung badly a couple of lines in the D minor pentatonic and panned it to the right, sung it out on my phone again and just sent it over, and I left all the background noise in because that just adds more texture, right? Put some vocal bender to change the formant. Auto-tune, obviously I needed it. vintage verb and some EQ. You can see I'm rolling off tons of low here. I don't really want low in anything apart from my bass and maybe my kick if I use it, but I don't even think I had a kick here. Now with all these samples, the percussion is really just to drive the groove along. It's not like meant to be hard drums that take over any of the melodic sounds. So there's a rim in here, a little tiny kick that accents all the different chord pushes, and this little clock winding up I thought sounded cool as a texture. May sound a bit strange, but when everything's in, it really works well. Very low in the mix, my favorite reverb, and some real kind of carving out of the EQ on there. Just put them very quietly, and a textural bed underneath that just lays a kind of melodic texture underneath. And I spoke about this in my last video, that can really help to just put a whole ambience and mood into your sample. That's just super low. A few ear candies sprinkled in throughout, that created the whole vibe. So keep it simple, guys. Couple of melodic sounds, couple of textural sounds, and you can make something beautiful. If you got something out of this and you want some more sauce, click up in the top corner